Hi, Erica. So great to see you.
Hi, Scott. It's nice to see you too. It's
It's
it's fun to be here.
it's been such a long time. I mean, it's been well over 2 months. Tell me what you've been doing in all this time in quarantine.
Well, the parenting gig is a pretty intense one, as any parent who's dealing with e-learning knows. And I'm actually teaching up a storm. I even signed up two new students during the quarantine. I teach all through the Music Institute of Chicago.
Right.
And people are really desperate to have their kids do anything
hmm
because all the activities have been so it's been good that way. But man, I sure miss playing with my colleagues.
I know. I mean, we all miss it, and that's one of the things that I've been most concerned about is how our musicians, who largely make a living through playing with these organizations that depend on getting huge groups of people together, how they're able to cope in this time. So it's wonderful to hear that you've been able to do that with teaching.
Yeah, it's seriously, I've got some of the best students ever of all ages and abilities, and I don't know what I would have done without them actually. Because, as any artist, it's when there's a crisis, and this happens to be a world crisis, you get pretty dark pretty quickly. And it's
Yeah.
really nice to have those young people with their fresh faces pull me out of it. And I don't know, I'm a performer, as you know. So
Yes.
teaching is in a way a kind of performance. So it's interesting how I might be feeling kind of grim or look at those numbers, oh Illinois, and then I start teaching and I'm like, well, and it's funny that I I need that performance, and I'm lucky to have an outlet in it with teaching, but
That's
not
great.
not the same kind of performance as playing, of course.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, for me, I think what fulfills that function is this.
Yay!
So, so great to be talking to you. Well, tell
Yeah,
me,
you too.
I mean, I think everyone is probably very fascinated slash a little bit in the dark about what oboists do and what they have to do because, um, you know, the oboist and I suppose the bassoonist, but especially the oboist, has a special duty that almost no other instrument has. And I thought maybe you could talk about that a little
Sure. You mean the tuning A, that duty,
bit.
or
Well,
just the
yes,
whole?
there's that. There's
I'm like,
playing the
wait, you
A.
mean reed making? Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, the whole reed making thing is, well, first of all, we oboists have a reputation for being kind of nuts and kind of crazy. And it's
Why
hard
is
to say
that?
what, oh, well, it's hard to say what came first. Was it that we're dealing with these oboe reeds all the time and that makes us crazy? Or were we crazy enough to want to play the oboe,
hmm
which has all these reeds that makes it's, a little cycle there.
Well,
um,
I do agree that there is that stereotype. I can't say that it's been borne out so much in the oboists that I've come to work with the Chicago Philharmonic. They all seem very well adjusted, but there is a
oh, yeah.
stereotype that oboists are neurotic, and that it has to do with the fact that they have to make their own reeds, which clarinetists have reeds, but they can just buy them, and
Right.
you've got to make them. So, can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's interesting because the oboe rewards detail orientation, and it kind of rewards neuroses actually.
Mm,
So it can kind of feed on itself if you're not careful. And every oboist I know, we're constantly going kind of like an up and down of how our reads affect our moods, et cetera. And that sounds kind of silly, but
mhm.
I guess the thing I've taken from it is it doesn't matter how many reads I make. I will always feel underprepared when I go to the rehearsal or the
Ah,
concert. Every time. Because I used to beat myself up. We almost
mhm.
do that a lot too. Where I'd be like, oh, I should have made more reads. But, you gotta work hard and do your thing and then hope for the best. And lots of times it's just not in the cards in
Mhm.
terms of, I guess, the thing that's so completely frustrating and exhilarating about playing the oboe is that every day your read is different.
Yeah.
So we never know what we're going to get. It's like that whole, Forrest Gump chocolates thing. Um,
Well, now wait, a couple questions about that.
yeah,
First of all,
sure.
if you make a number of reads and you bring them all to rehearsal, and are you aware of the different characteristics of the different reads that you make so that you can say, for this piece, I'm going to use this one.
Oh,
For that piece, I'm going to use
definitely.
that one. Okay.
Definitely. Well, like here's my reed box right now. And
Oh,
I mean, and I would say every professional oboist in Chicago probably has at least that many, and there's more over here. And the reason why is, of course, that makes sense to have reeds for different pieces. But actually, every time, like, say we're rehearsing at Pickstager, I don't know which reeds are going to be the best ones there. And then
ah,
if we go to auditorium theater, I don't know which reed will be the one that'll work there. So
ah.
there's so many variables, it's hard to get that scientific about it because you just don't know in terms,
S-
and that's why you always see us scratching away,
Right.
because it's not because we're once again underprepared, it's because we're adapting. You really
Let's
don't want us to
let's
play on it without
clarify.
fixing it first.
Let's clarify just so that no one misinterprets what you mean
Sure.
by oboist scratching away.
All right. Well, I don't know if this sounds much better, but well, let me, maybe I should just take you through it a little bit.
Sure, I'd love that.
We basically make our reeds from this wood called cane, and it's like bamboo.
Mm-hmm.
You see, there's tubes of it here. I
Mm.
guess, if I were able to make a noise on a flute, I might be able to do that, but I can't. Um,
Do you know where that is,
and
where that wood comes from, where it's grown?
Well, it's grown in Mexico, in China, and this I think is from Italy and
Mm-hmm.
France. And
Mm-hmm.
it grows to be about, I don't know, like 20 feet tall. And it's different diameters, and the bigger diameters for like clarinet and bassoon and bass clarinet and all those and saxophones. But then the smaller diameter
Mm-hmm.
are for oboe. So actually, when I'm teaching oboe reeds and when you deal with the art of the oboe reed, it's usually with all the scraping, and that's what you see. But a little behind the scenes for any professional oboist
Mm-hmm.
is that you've got all of this fun equipment, as you can
Look at
see.
that.
So I started out here with the tube cane, and
Mm-hmm.
then after I split it, I got a piece that looks like this. And then this is called a guillotine, which is super fun because,
Mm-hmm.
French Revolution and all. And then that makes the piece of cane look like that. And
Ah,
then I push it through a pre-gouger. And then this is my Inaleti gouger. And then it looks like that. And that's not even, we haven't even gotten to the art part. So that's just the equipment beforehand.
and that's
And
taking the
then,
tube. You're taking the tube that you're starting with. It comes to you in that
mhm,
form, right? And then
yes,
you have to get it into a form where, if I'm not mistaken, you can put two pieces against each other, right? Because these are double reed instruments, the oboe and the bassoon.
exactly.
And
And
maybe you can
so
explain that.
yeah, so it's interesting because we have this. Once we get down to this piece of cane here,
Hmm.
then what do? I shape it on this little device here. I
Uh,
shape it to be. I don't know if you can see this very well.
yeah.
You, to about that narrow. I mean, it's small, and then we use thread, and I've got these little tubes here that you put it on there. But see, it's still a single reed because it's just folded over and there's no opening.
Right.
And then it looks more like this, but
Aha.
still, again, not a double reed yet,
Yep.
no opening. But then we start scraping on it, and then it
Ah,
starts to look like the reed that we think of.
I see.
Yeah, and so that's
So when scraping on it, you're taking off the connecting piece, I assume, that
right.
makes it just a single reed, and then suddenly it's two reeds. It's two pieces.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I scrape it thinner. You can see I even have some floof at the top there, which is kind of fun. And
Ah,
then I use a little cutting block like this, and then I
mhm.
clip it, and then that's how we get the opening. And then begins the art of making it work. And oh my. it is quite something. Because let's say you get a really awesome read to work for you,
Mhm.
it maybe only lasts for maybe 5 or 6 hours of playing, maybe
Wow.
8 hours. So then we start getting kind of squirrely because you'll be like, oh, this is a really good read, and I'll save this for this, and then
Ah,
you like to have lots of options
yeah.
because at any time a read could betray you.
Now, when you make a reed from the very first piece of the cylinder that you have to an
Hmm.
artistically crafted final product that you're going to use in
Sure.
your oboe, how much time does that take?
Oh my gosh, that is such a hard question, and the reason why is because we a read is better if you do a few things to it over many days.
I see.
And so it's really hard to calculate how much time it would actually be because, but imagine if I, if I processed a whole bunch of cane, that might be an hour, and
Mhm.
I could probably gouge it in that time, and that would maybe be 30 pieces. But then, I mean, it's all part of it is just the whole quantity over quality because you
Right.
just, for me personally, I make them all into reeds, and I really don't know until, like, this one looks like a reed, but it doesn't really work yet. And
Uh-huh.
so after I get this to look like a reed, then I put it away, and then I come
Right.
back to it and get it to sound as good as I can, and then I put it away, and then I
Right.
come back to. So it takes days. I know that's not a very good answer,
No, it
but
makes
so it
sense.
might.
You're actually processing several reads at once. So,
Yes,
you do one step with lots of reads, and then maybe the next
exactly.
day you might do another step with lots of reads.